Hey everybody. Um, I am just trying to document what I'm doing here on my boat, and also if there are other parties that are interested, that they can see what's happening too. Um, this is a traditional long keeled boat. It's called full keel. It's got a bowsprit and it's cutter rigged. It's 36 foot on deck, 42 at the bowsprit, 30, 31 and a half feet of water line, and about 5 feet of draft. It's 24,000 pounds, with about 10,300 of that in lead, encapsulated lead. Originally designed pretty much, the first major design that looked similar to this boat was by William Atkins, called, I think it was Tally Ho Major. Um, but basically, it's a Colin Archer design, the long keel. Colin Archer boats have a pointed stern as well as the bow, but these boats have what's called a wine glass stern. So when I walk around the boat, the deck tour, I'll show you how that looks. I think it's really pretty, and it adds more volume to the stern. It also helps the boat rise to a following sea a little bit better. Um, this boat, the Cape George Cutter 36, is known as a well sailing boat. It's relatively narrow. It's 10 and a half feet of beam, and so she goes to windward pretty well. It's got a comfort motion ratio, if you believe that number, of around 50, which is very high. I think West sails are like 45 or something. So it's that heavy displacement that helps keep the boat relatively mellow as you know as you can get, I guess. So where I am in this boat is originally I bought it without any mast, boom, no rigging, and no deck hardware. It had the chain plates on it, but basically it had never been, there was not even a hole in the cabin top. It's got a deck step mast. I'm sorry, it's got a keel step mast. Um, so, so that was one of the major issues that I saw when I was looking at it originally. But I really like the bones of the boat. It's never been sailed. The engine has like 30 to 40 hours on it. Diesel. It's a Daimler Benz, 36 horsepower, and so I knew that motor would be strong. They're really well. Although it's a bit older engine, it's was a super popular engine, and went along for many years, being used in tractors, heavy industrial kind of applications. So it's a strong engine. So I knew that the engine was good. The hull was sound, zero blisters, and the cabin work on the deck and inside was beautiful, although unfinished. So one of the first things I did was, I had a carpenter, fine cabinetry maker, finish all of the cabinet faces. So those are finished but not installed. I just quite haven't got there yet. And then the head door, I had made. It's all mahogany in the interior and Alaskan yellow cedar, which to me has got enough light in it, and wood to kind of give the feeling of a kind of a classic boat look, but also enough light to where it doesn't feel dark and heavy. I kind of like that balance, personally. So, what else can I talk about as far as the general? Okay, well, I could tell you a little bit about myself. So I originally learned to sail with my dad on El Toro, when I was probably 9, and no, a little older, probably 10. And so we learned to sail that, and he just tried by ourselves. He was learning too, so we just tried, the both of us, and then my dad signed us up for a place, I think it was called Pelican Sailing School, or something like that. So we were actually sailing sloop rigged, very simple boat. I think it was probably like 16 feet, but the instructor was really good, and I really enjoyed it. It was down in Redwood City, California, a place that's no longer there called Pete's Harbor. Um, but so learned to sail, and then in high school, I read Lee Graham's book Dove, and so I really got the itch to cruise. And also, at about 1970, I met my father's friend who they worked together, and he was planning on cruising a giant, a pretty big, heavy wooden 50-foot Cullen Archer design boat called the Gaucho. It actually has been around the world twice, and it's raised three separate families on that boat. Kids that have gone on to sail and be incredible people. So I think the history of the Gaucho is pretty interesting. There's a book called The Seagoing Gaucho, which is written in English, and there's another Argentine book that was never translated, but I think it's called like 50,000 miles or something on the Gaucho, I think it's called. I've never actually seen it except online. So the Gaucho was an interesting boat. Famous marine architect in Argentina designed it, and what the architect was really known for, it wasn't the Gaucho. It was another boat called the Leg Segundo, or Leg Two. And that boat was solo circumnavigated in the Roaring Forties by a man named Vito Dumas. And if you're into history, he's a pretty famous guy. As far as Argentines go, he's probably the most famous navigator. But I think most Americans would think of, or most people from the U.S. would think of Slocum, Joshua Slocum, as being famous for what he achieved. But Vito Dumas is famous, and there's books written about him. And it's an interesting story if you ever get to find that book. It's around. I think there's a book called Famous Voyages in Small Boats, and there's part of that book is on Dumas. So I'm going to stop this video now and then start it again for another episode.